Real Estate Agents Podcast.
As we continue to head into another, what I would consider unknown year, coming off arguably 2 or 3 tough years, it's important to continue to talk about the trends and what the expectations are so that we can set ourselves up for success, whether that be adjusting the consumer mindset and strategies to eliminate market fears, whether that be creating reasons for prospective buyers to consider purchasing now, or some benefits you may not be considering or you might be overlooking for your buyers. This episode is going to discuss all of that and probably a little bit more with a very well-renowned coach in the real estate and mortgage industry. He has trained over 100,000 sales professionals. Too many awards for me to even mention because you're just that decorated. And if you're watching this, you can see all of those awards behind him right now. An author of 2 books, Dale Vermillion. Welcome to the show, my friend.
Jeff, it's great to be here. Thanks so much.
So,
Appreciate it. Actually, I'm fortunate to say there was another 0 on that number. I've trained over 1 million sales professionals.
oh God, yeah. You know what? I did. I left the comma out. I'm sorry.
Yeah, when you got 42 years of doing this, you get around a lot of people, and I love the fact that I've been able to be influenced by that many great people like you. So excited about
Slightly, yeah. That's just a minor difference, and I'm thank you for correcting me on that. Now, I do want to ask you because you do have obviously a very decorated career, and if you had to say so, your past, I would say, or your and your current, everything is really more geared towards geared towards sales professionals, but you've really had a lot of success in the mortgage space specifically, correct?
98%. I mean, I started in the mortgage industry as a loan officer in 1983. I ran branches, districts, regions, and ran a national mortgage company as my last corporate job in 1995. So I had 900 loan officers and 1,300 support staff for operations. Worked with realtors all over the country. Been in the real estate business all this time. So 42 years of mortgage and real estate predominantly. I've trained some insurance companies and other financial service companies and banking institutions many times, but predominantly it's mortgage and real estate.
All those awards you've won, you should win an award for, there's got to be some sort of award for tenure, because anybody that can last that long in an industry as tumultuous and volatile as ours, that deserves something, man. I applaud you.
Well, I got gray hair, so the gray hair on the side. That's the award I've learned.
You still have hair. That's something I can't say. So one more question before we get into it. Of all the awards you have won, what would you say is the one that you're most proud of?
That's easy. We won an award from the Better Business Bureau for ethics and integrity, and that's probably the one that I value the most. Now, Housing Wire, I've been a Vanguard for 4 years in a row. I don't know that anybody else has been fortunate enough to do that 4 straight years. That's a pretty humongous award in my book. I was Mortgage Global 100 one year too. So those are probably the ones. But to me, it's about ethics and integrity and making a difference. And we got that from Better Business Bureau because we had not only done things in the industry to help organizations, but we're a firm believer in giving back and making sure that all the money you make, it goes back into the community to help people that need help. So that's probably the one I'm most proud of.
Love it. Now I want to shift and start to get into some of these topics, because obviously someone with your tenure has got a lot of experience, and again, you deal with a lot of professionals within the industry, so you've definitely got your finger on the pulse. But I want to ask you before we get into that, as someone who's been in coaching for how many years now? Well, what year did you exit officially?
1995. So 30 years. This is our 30-year anniversary.
Okay. Now, there has been a massive influx of, and I'm going to put big quotations, coaches.
Yep.
What is your take on all of that? And as somebody who's probably lost in all the noise and it's massively diluted, what's advice you would give to somebody in this new world that we now live in?
Yeah, that's a great question. Look, there is so many, you can't keep track of them anymore. And I got to be honest with you. I mean, some of them I know, some of them I don't, but some of them that I've known over the years, they have never really had a track record of success. I think that's the key right there. Like, why would you ever want to get coached by somebody who hasn't mastered the business themselves? You need somebody who has proven through their through their success, through their credentials, through their past results, that they not only have the capacity to run operations and create big numbers, but they can do it at scale. That's the person you want. And there are some great coaches out there today, but it's a handful, to be honest with you. I mean, of the hundreds that I see out there, I would give you a list. If you were to ask me, in a side conversation, of probably 6 or 7 names, and that's it. That's all I would give you.
Wow. So if somebody is at that point in their career where they say, okay, I definitely need that accountability, what should be something, how do I sniff that out? Because there are a lot of good coaches that
Yeah.
aren't in that list of yours that are very eloquent, or maybe have a big following on social, whether it's real or not.
Yeah.
And it's hard to kind of, it's hard to swim through all that.
Yeah. Well, let me clarify one thing right away. So I know that I get referred to as a coach a lot, and I think of myself that way, but really we're a training company, and that's what I've been. I do coach C-level executives all over the country and mentor them. But most of what I do is speaking and training and consulting, more so than coaching, quote unquote. So if you're talking one-to-one relationship, coaching people through their careers, we don't do that. And there are people who do that who are really, really good at that. So the way you would muddle through that is, first off, remember, you need to interview them just like you're interviewing an employee. Don't just go off their website and their credentials. Interview them to make sure that you're like-minded in your approach to the business, that what they're going to bring to you is going to bring the things that really make a difference, and get some references from them of people they've coached that are in the same position, the same part of the industry that you're in. Talk to those references before you ever hire a coach. Make sure that they say, yeah, this person literally changed my career, changed my life, helped me create accountability. And by the way, you mentioned one of the most important words for sales professionals, or any professional for that matter: accountability. That's the game. It's amazing to me how many people I work with and companies I work with, where I'll sit even with executives and say, who's holding you accountable to what you're doing? And what kind of accountability system do you have within your organization? And they really don't. They look at numbers and they talk about numbers, but there's no week to week, peer to peer, and then peer to leader type of accountability. You need both of those. You need it sideways and you need it vertical. You need both of those happening if you're going to be successful. And you can seek that out yourself. Go within your organization. Find those mentors that are unbelievable at what they do in your profession. Go up and start learning from them. And it even helps further if you can find people that think like you do, because you'll be able to relate better to what they're saying to you. And it will make a major difference.
Yeah. So what was it that caused you? Let's rewind the clock. And what is it that kind of intrigued you, or caused you to do that pivot and leave the industry and move into coaching
So
or
I managed,
training, as
yeah,
you mentioned?
I managed for 12 years at a whole bunch of different levels, as I mentioned, for 3 different companies. And everything that I managed became number one very quickly. Took the number one, took a branch over, make it number one, did another one, then took a district from 42nd out of 44 to number one in a year. And I realized that my passion as a leader was really training and coaching my people, mentoring them, showing them how to sell effectively. I kind of learned and developed a system of selling when I was a loan officer that I started to apply with my people. And then we started making it better and better and better and better and better. And everybody that I trained, I was hiring people off the street. I'd never hired an experienced loan officer one time in 12 years. If you had experience, I didn't hire you. I brought people in that were waiters and waitresses and worked in retail sales, and I taught them the mortgage industry and taught them how to sell, and they were all successful. So 1995, I was the president of a national mortgage company with 2,300 employees, and the CEO did me a favor. She froze my bonus at the end of my 1 year, even though I'd increased the numbers 400% in 1 year. It's because she didn't like me. So I said, fine, I'll take my package because I had a contract. I'll just go run another company. No problem. Well, in that 90-day window where I was looking at other offers, a guy called me up and says, we got a conference in Vegas. Why don't you come speak at it? I'm like, I'm not a speaker. He goes, shoot, I saw you speak at that conference with our company. It was unbelievable. Come speak for 20 minutes. Bring your wife. we'll pay you $10,000 and all your travel expenses. I'm like, okay. I am not kidding you, Jeff. I walked off the stage. 5 CEOs walked up and said, could you come speak at our company? I
Wow.
looked at my wife. I said, I think we're in business. That was 30 years ago.
Wow. Wow. What a cool story.
I've worked with 700 companies now, so it's pretty crazy.
So, you know, and here's the question. I now know the answer, but when I was still in production myself, I used to always kind of question, again, people that are in your industry. And always, I had this thought in my mind, or the question in my mind was like, well, if you were so good at it and you made so much money, why would you leave that to go do this? Now, again, I know the answer because
Yeah.
I've since done this and a lot more recently than you. What's your answer to that question to anybody who sits out there to think to themselves, I'm sure you were making, again, 30 years ago, maybe not what
Really
it
good
is
money.
today, but it's 7 figures today.
Yeah.
And so why would you leave that for a dream?
My wife asked me the same question. And the answer was, look, I'm a great leader with people and I love to do that. I'm a terrible employee. Like, I don't like being told what to do, which tells me I'm an entrepreneur and I'm not driven for that. Like, that's not my DNA. I need to go do something on my own. I don't know what that is yet. And the fact of the matter is, here's really what it came down to. I wanted the freedom. And I really just I'd done all the corporate stuff. I climbed the ladder to the top. It wasn't as glorious as I thought it would be. And I thought, why not try something? I could always go back and run mortgage companies. That's an easy thing to do. But if I don't take the shot, I'll never know. And son of a gun, did it pay off? I mean, unbelievable.
Yeah, that's cool. Yeah, and not only that, and my take, I've got several takes on it, but it's just more rewarding to me doing what I do now
Yeah.
versus slinging mortgages. Not that there is not a lot of reward in that, but there's a level of burnout, and when you find a new passion and then there's a demand, as you experienced by flying to Vegas, it kind of changes things, opens the door to new things.
Yeah, and the higher you go in the corporate ladder, the less freedoms you have. Like,
Yeah.
you owe your soul to the company store. There's no question about that when you're running a company that large. So I wanted the freedom. We have 4 kids. I did not want to be working the crazy hours and forced to travel constantly. I want to at least choose my travel. I still ended up traveling a lot, but I got to choose it and I got to pick it and I got to oversee it. That was really pivotal in our family's life. And my wife and I have been married 32 years now. And I think it really helped our marriage immensely because before that, it was, CEO calls and says, you're going to California for 3 days. You're going to California for 3 days. You don't have much of a choice.
Yeah, yeah. That's fascinating, and obviously, there's no looking back at this point. Obviously,
No,
you're probably on the different doorstep now, the
I
doorstep
am.
to to boating and golfing and all the things.
Pretty soon. You betcha.
I love it. I love it. So obviously, with all this experience, you've got a fair amount of insight as to, gosh, we've had some crazy years,
We have.
and there's got to be a turning point. I mean, all of the cycles in the past tell us that there's going to be a cyclical change. And whether we like it or not, our audience is primarily real estate agents on the lab coat agent side. You know, the mortgage business side of real estate is a big driver to the good and the bad to what's going on in our world and our industry and whatnot. What are you anticipating and looking towards as we head into, 2025?
Yeah. So great starting question, Jeff. And let me say this. I hear this from everybody. It's been such a tough 3 years. And part of that is true. But here's the most interesting thing for the audience to understand from my perspective, because you got to understand, I'm working with dozens and dozens of companies across the nation, thousands of sales professionals every single month, both mortgage and real estate. I just did a webinar last week for a client of mine that had 500 realtors on it that I did a webinar for. And here's what I'm seeing in the market today. Generally, in a normal real estate and mortgage market, when you look at employee performance on the sales side, you've got your top performers that are just killing it always. You got performers who do well. You've got the people in the middle that they're doing average, they're doing okay, they're trying to get up, and then you got the bottom tier. Generally 4 tiers. That's not what it's been for the last 3 years. It's haves and have-nots. there's either people crushing it or they're getting crushed. There's no in between anymore. I've never seen that in 30 years in doing this or 42 years in the business where there was such a gap between top and bottom performance. It seems like people either got this totally figured out and they're loving these markets and they're crushing it and having record years. And I've got several clients that had a record 2023, better than 2022 or 2021 or 2020, then beat it in 2024, and they're looking at a record 2025 now. And the question becomes, how can that be in a 7% market with all of the issues that we deal with? And the answer is that things aren't the way they appear a lot of times. So let's talk about a couple of these factors I'm talking about. Let's start with rates, okay? Everybody wants to talk about the rate problem. The rate is not the problem. 4.5 million people, according to Fannie Mae, are going to buy a home this year. That's in line and more than the last 3 years, even with these rates where they're at. The thing about rates that we need to understand, here's what happens when rates shift dramatically like they did from 2021 to 2022. You have a 6-month cooling off period that consumers go through, where when that fast rate change happened, now that was a difficult market. 2022, to me, was the only year that was really tough because we went from the lowest rates in U.S. history within 7 months to almost a 6% increase in rates. That's historic, okay? Now, in that time, a lot of people seized up, pulled out of the market and said, wait, what's happening here? When's it going to go back to 3.5? And they held their breath. And after 6 or 7 months goes by, they start to recognize and realize maybe this is the new norm. And then after a year, all of a sudden they're like, this definitely is the new norm. And you start to see people move back into the market. We saw this in this market. I've been doing this 42 years. I've seen that happen 7 previous times in 7 other markets where we had major rate shifts. So you've got a cooling off period. Once you get past that, people commit to the fact that they say, okay, it is what it is. They're going to keep buying homes. Home ownership is still the American dream. They're going to keep looking for money to do improvements and build wealth and do all the things that mortgages can provide. So the bottom line is the American dream doesn't change just because rates go up. Now, let's talk about the inventory issue for a minute. Because then everybody says, well, what about inventory? All right, well, let's talk about inventory. Inventory has been actually going up month after month, year after year for the last year and a half. Last year specifically, we saw some nice increases. We were down at 400,000 at one point in numbers of units. Now, that was a problem. We got up to almost 800,000 at the end of last year. And if you were to ask, what does a normal market look like for listings that are out there? It's about 1.1 million. It's a pretty standard market. If you go back to some of our good markets where we sold a lot of homes, 1.1, 1.2, 1.3 million was pretty normal. So now think about this. If we have 800,000 units and 1.2 million is normal, we're about 33% below where we need to be. But we also have a real estate market where there's 50% realtors than there was 2 years ago. So when you start to do the calculations on this and you start looking net, what you're really looking at for each sales professional is you have just as much inventory per capita today for your success as you had in the heyday markets.
Sounds to me like more.
You may have more. And then here's the better part of it. Now you're competing against other realtors who they're all hung up by the marketplace and their attitude is in the absolute toilet. And you know the old saying, the way you think is the way you're going to react. The bottom line is markets don't dictate success. Our beliefs and our behaviors do. That's what dictates success in a marketplace. So as people see the market shift and they start to get depressed about it, they move to the have-nots. And the ones that are the haves are the ones that go, well, people are still buying regardless of what the rates do. And when they say I'm looking for a home, they know rates are 7%. They see the same Google News that you and I see, yet they're raising their hand and going, I want to buy. The problem today is affordability. That's the only real problem we have. Now, let me be clear about what I just said, okay? Because I don't want to lose credibility with your audience. Some of you are going, but there is some inventory issues. Of course there is in certain markets, in certain zip codes, in certain places. That is true. I'm talking more national on these numbers. But even in those markets, so you expand your territory. That's all you have to do. So if your marketplace has a real inventory problem, start to expand your geography out to work in some other communities. That's what mortgage professionals do who are doing well today. Jeff, I'm training loan officers who are doing $100 million a year in business without even blinking right now. They did it in 23, they're doing it again in 24, and they're going to do it again in 25. They're not limited because they've expanded their geography a little bit. And said, okay, so maybe I do have to go 30 minutes. Maybe I do have to get outside of my local territory a little bit. But that's what I'm going to do to make this augment the problem that we're dealing with. The real issue, as I see it, is affordability. Because high rates with increasing property values, remember, we've had 13 years now of property values go up. We've never seen that in our lifetimes, okay? Normally, go pre, COVID and pre the market shift in 2008, 9, and 10. If you go before that, about every 7 to 8 years, you'd see a market correction. That was very common with property values. And about every 3 years, you'd see a market correction with interest rates. So it was I called it the 3-7 rule, and it pretty much ran true all the time. 3 years, 7 years, that's what you saw. We're now 13 years of property value increases. Rates have gone up substantially. The problem is affordability. Now you got to be creative in this marketplace to solve that equation. You solve that equation, you unlock all kinds of real estate business overnight. And stop thinking about the negative aspects of the business. Recognize that no matter what the rates are going to do, people are still going to buy homes. That's going to happen. That's not going to shift. I've said it my whole career. You'll never interview a fifth grader who says, when I grow up, I want to be a renter. Okay? That ain't going to happen. Barry Habib, he quotes this all the time. Homeowners in the United States have 40 times the wealth on average of renters. Why would you ever want to rent? It does not make sense. So if you start to think in the terms of, okay, even in higher rate markets with all of these challenges, homeownership is far better than renting. You're building asset value. You're creating wealth. You're doing all the things you want to do. This is the time to buy. Now we just got to help them figure out how to become affordable.
Yeah, it's a lot to unpack right there. And
yeah, I'm sorry. I kind of went on a
no,
I apologize.
that was excellent. Actually, my one of many thoughts that I had was, I wonder how many real estate professionals listening to this are thinking to themselves, Dale, will you crack over to the real estate side and lead me too? You might get that. So just be prepared. Tell Jake to be ready to field those emails.
I love it. We'd be glad to do it.
So let's go back to what were obviously the elephant in the room. And older millennials, Gen X, my generation, baby boomers, we understand, I think, a lot more of what you've described there because we've seen it.
Yep.
But then you've got this generation that's about ready to legitimately take over our economy. And
Yep.
that's just data, right? And it's Gen Z, and they have been fear-mongered into the ground.
Right.
And because of just the way media is nowadays, right? And it's all about views and all this stuff, which fear-mongering drives the most engagement. And so they truly, I mean, how do we overcome this? Because I know it. I got two Gen Zers, 21 and 24, and both of them kind of had the attitude, with a dad who's been in the mortgage and real estate business for 25 years, that buying a home is almost a lost dream anymore.
Yeah.
So how do we beat that?
Yeah. So that's one of the best questions I've been asked in a long time, Jeff. I love how you posed that. And it's really one word is the answer. It's education. That's all it is. And I hate to say this because I train thousands upon thousands upon thousands of loan officers across the country every month. 95% of loan officers don't educate their borrowers. All they do is qualify their borrowers. That's a lost art. Same with realtors. We don't educate as much as we should be educating. First off, let me say this to the audience, okay? If you're a real estate professional, here's my first bit of advice. Go find the most kick-butt loan officer on the planet and partner with them in every transaction that you do. So what you're going to do is you're going to start doing meetings where when somebody says, hey, I'm looking to buy a home, Have them come in with their spouse, have them bring all their documentation, bring that loan officer into that meeting, have a joint meeting all together. And while you're looking on the MLS and you're looking at your listings to find a home for them, they're going to be pre-qualifying and pre-approving them right there on the spot for you. And you need a loan officer that can educate you on the mortgage side of the business, so you have a better mindset of who qualifies, of what it takes to get qualified, of how you create affordability. These things will really enrich your life. For many years as a realtor, we didn't need to know all that stuff. We could just let the mortgage professional do that. But today you actually do need to know all that stuff, just like I teach loan officers, get partnered with realtors and learn their business from them. Let them educate you. So when you talk to a borrower, you can give them strategies on how to buy a home right and how to shop properly and where you should be looking. Because now you become that consummate professional that nobody else is, that when that borrower or that buyer deals with you, they don't even think about your competition. They're eliminated. So it really comes down to education, educating on all the reasons why homeownership is still the best game in town. It's asset accumulation through equity. It's tax deduction benefits. Tax deduction benefits are one of the biggest reasons you would buy a home today that people never talk about. Never talk about. Think about it for just a minute, okay? Here's an interesting stat. The last 3 years since COVID, since the rates went down after COVID, we have seen the majority of homeowners across the United States are taking their standard deductions because they doubled the standard deduction around COVID, if you remember. And then because rates were 2%, 2.5%, take a normal mortgage. So 400,000 is the average mortgage loan amount in the United States, say $400,390 or something like that. We'll just call it 400,000. If you have a 3% rate on that, you're getting a $12,000 interest deduction because you get 100% of your interest is deductible up to a $750,000 mortgage amount. That's the law, okay? That's the IRS rule. Now, at $12,000, with a 29.9 maximum standard deduction for married couples filing jointly, which is the majority of who our customers are, they're taking the standard. Why would I take the itemized deduction? But you buy get a $400,000 mortgage in a 7% market, that's $28,000 in interest alone. Okay, wait a minute, game changer. Now I take that deduction, I add my $10,000 max deduction for property tax, personal tax, and income tax. Now I'm up to, take that 28, add 10, you're at 38. And now I take my charitable contributions, my other contributions, I'm all of a sudden up to $48,000. I just increased my deductions by 20 grand. If you're in a 24% tax bracket, that's $5,000. You'll get back at the end of the year you would not have gotten. That gets to apply to your mortgage. You just brought your payment down by $400 a month, just like that. It's like getting a rebate on your payment is really what it's like. So these are things, if I'm a realtor, I'm explaining this to my first-time buyers, which are 54% of my market. Wait a minute, hold on. Let's talk about tax benefits. Let's talk about equity appreciation. Let's look at what the real estate market has done for the last 50 years. Let's compare that to the stock market. There's no comparison. More people have become wealthy from real estate than anything else. These are just stats that you can get online that you can use to educate people to help them understand that owning a home is still the best decision to make. Because when you rent, remember, not only do you not know what your payment's going to be next year because the landlord controls it, but you don't know if they're going to let you stay in the house next year. They might get a good offer and kick your butt out. So you have no stability whatsoever. You get no tax benefits. You get no appreciation benefits. You get no amortization benefits. You get none of the benefits you get with home ownership. And people will say, well, what about homeowners insurance and all these other costs? Well, the beauty is, again, your property taxes can become deductible, but that's a cost for owning. Just like when you rent, you're losing opportunities. That's a reverse cost that you're paying because you're not gaining any wealth. So education, Jeff, is the answer to the question every time.
Yeah. Yeah. And even taking it one step further, how to articulate that to reach more people, because for the majority of real estate agents and loan officers, as you mentioned, they are really only coming in contact with the consumer at the time of application.
Right.
And because honestly, we're probably one of the worst industries as it relates to marketing. And frankly, I mean, that's my specialty, partially because we've been taught all wrong using these vehicles called social that were never designed to be used the way a Tom, Mike Ferry, or any of these traditional coaches have taught you to prospect, but they tried to integrate it and push it into social, which is what it wasn't designed for. And so I think what you just said there is the thing that everybody needs to wrap their head around. How do I take these benefits that Gen Z needs to understand and learn about, but articulate it to where I'm going to get their attention and they're going to pay attention and they're going to actually watch. And I think that's the biggest trick for the next handful of years, to see some sort of a shift, I think, in our industry.
Yeah, and I think the other side of that too is, you see all these young kids now buying these homes and renting out rooms within the home. It's the Uber concept to real estate. Who'd ever thought that would have ever been a thing? But it is a thing now. And again, if you can just, and this is why I again advise, get a real estate agent who partners up with a really good mortgage professional who knows these kinds of strategies, people that I've trained over the years that implement these on a daily basis. When you interview a mortgage loan officer, don't just ask them what their products are, for goodness sakes, okay? Dig in and say, where do you rank as a loan officer within your company, within your community? If they're not the best one, why would you want to work with them? My feeling is, let's get a really good one. Now, if they say to you, well, you know what? I'm newer, but you know what? I am going to work my tail off for you, and you love the person you're talking to, and they're very smart on what they're doing, bring them in. They're going to be a great partner for you. But use them to be a partner to grow your knowledge of the things that will help you to portray a better picture when you sit down with a prospective candidate to buy a home. To show them why, in a 7% world, with all of the challenges out there, with insurance costs going up and property taxes being high, inflation being what it is, why it's still a better bet. Remember, you have to have a housing payment of some kind, okay?
Yeah.
Just boil it down to that always, all right? And I always take with first-time buyers and say, what are you paying for rent today? Okay, I think the national average is like $1,932 a month. Okay, well, that's going to get you a $320,000 mortgage right there. That payment applied to a mortgage at today's rates of 7% is like a $320,000 loan amount. So would you rather be paying that to have nothing, or would you rather be paying that to have a $320,000 valued home that, even though property values have reduced in their increases over the last several years, we just saw, again, a 4.8% increase in property values in November. CoreLogic just released that data yesterday. So we're seeing things continue to grow. It's consistent. It's the best bet in town. This is all the reason why you want to own a home.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think that kind of covers, I mean, obviously, this wasn't exactly intentional. This has just been conversational. But as I mentioned in the intro, talking about the consumer mindset and strategies to eliminate, I think that was the perfect answer to that. Did we leave anything out? Was there anything else, any other nuggets or bullets, so to speak, that you would put into the gun from the educational piece that maybe somebody's not thinking about?
What I always like to do with first-time buyers is like to sit down and just do the calculations with them and sit down and say, look, okay, you're going to put this much money down on this home, all right? That's going to be your initial cost, is coming out of pocket, but that goes straight into your equity in the property that you're going to buy. Remember that. It's not going in a hole somewhere. It's going into property that's going to grow. You're going to get that money back. It's really an investment is what you're making there. But then let's look at, what are your tax benefits going to be this year? And let's look at, all right, over the course of the year, you're going to see principal reduction on your mortgage. That becomes equity that you're building. That amortization reduction in your balance is equity you're creating every year. So you got to add that back in as one of the things that's helping you build more wealth. Because if your payments are $2,000 a month, and let's say that $200 of that is going towards the principal initially, and $1,800 is going to interest, well, that's $2,400 in equity you're building on top of the equity you're establishing from the marketplace. So let's do that calculation. If it's 6% in 2025, 300,000, 6%, that's $18,000 in equity you're going to build. Another $2,400 you're going to build in amortization. You're over 20,000. Add your tax benefit on top of that. You're making some money this year.
Yeah.
That's the way that I would portray it to them, to show them the value, because if you show them in dollars and cents, they can't argue it. It's just that simple. And then you layer on top of that the stability and permanency of housing, where it's your place. You can create your personality around it. You can do anything you want with it. Like, there's a lot to be said for that. You know, the Gen Zers are a very creative generation. They like things a certain way. Well, if you're renting, you're not going to have it the way you want it. You own, it's your place. You can do with it like you like. And I think that's going to be a powerful message to that age group.
Yeah, yeah. And I think you mentioned it too, continuing to drive home the opportunity that you have at a young age before you've started a family, which is to have roommates, to have tenants, so to speak. And I mean, Dale, you probably lived this. I did. I didn't do it, but I talked about it when I was younger. Like, I wish I had done that. I wish I had bought a multifamily, or taken in roommates and bought the house. But I didn't, and I kicked myself. And that was not out of necessity. That was just simply opportunity that I wanted to create for myself, and I didn't.
Right.
Now it's more necessity, but that necessity will create wealth. And why not? Because the majority of your generation believes they can't. So take advantage of those people, like, you know. And so I'd almost challenge real estate agents or mortgage professionals to articulate it that way. Speak to them, make them understand it, understand their language, and go to them.
Yeah, and let me add one more thing to that, because I love this. I have a client who's in New York, and it's a whole group of Hasidic Jewish people. They're my favorite clients to go see. They're just such fun guys. And I was talking to one of the guys one day, and he said, "Hey, I got this strategy I use. I want to run it by and see what you think." I said, "Okay, what's that?" He goes, "Well, I go into synagogue, and what I'll do is I'll walk up to somebody and I say, 'Do you own a home?' And when they say, 'Oh, no,' I go, 'Well, you know, that's what I do for a living. But let me just ask you a question. All right, how long have you been renting?' And they go, 4 years. Okay, how much you pay for rent?" And they go, "I pay $2,000 a month." And he said, "I pull out my phone, I do a calculation, I go, oh, so you've paid this much." He goes, I put the number right in their face of how much they've spent for rent for the last 4 years. He said, "Now, how much have you gotten for that back?" And they always go, "Nothing." Okay, can I ask you one more question then? Think 10 years down the road. If you keep doing what you're doing now for 10 more, what's that number going to look like? And how much more will the number grow by? And he walks away. He said, "I walk away. I leave him with that. I let him think about it." He said, "They're running to chase me down in the synagogue because they realize they're doing the math and going, oh my gosh, I'm going to spend hundreds of thousands of dollars and have zero." It will never, the equation never changes unless you own a home. So those kinds of simple conversations can mean the world in changing somebody's mind as to why real estate might be the way to go.
So when we start hearing these stories about all of these real estate professionals going into their various churches, their various religious organizations, we're going to know we can direct it right. It came back from this episode.
That's right.
I don't know that I advise that. That's bold, but hey, you know, sometimes it takes bold strategies to see opportunities.
Yeah, just don't do it during the sermon. That probably wouldn't be a nice thing to do.
I would agree. I would agree. Yes, exactly. Although it's funny you mentioned the Jewish religion, because some of my friends, and I don't know what it is about the mortgage industry, but some of my Jewish friends are some of the most successful loan officers that I've ever met and continue to be. It's always that correlation for some reason, and if you know, you know, and so it's interesting. All right, so let's segue over to, so we've kind of talked about a lot of these opportunities that exist in the education piece and what we need to be doing. You know, you mentioned, as we were kind of talking off air pre episode, about some of the lesser known benefits. And I think obviously we've already really gone down that rabbit hole as it relates to tax advantages and things like that. You know, is there anything else from the mortgage side very specifically? Because I think most real estate professionals are by now pretty darn familiar with all of the tricks, but they may not be. And going back to what you even said too about finding the right partner, which I like how you articulated that. At first, I was a little fearful for what you were saying. Go find number one. But then, of course, you backtracked it and said, but there might be some advantages to a young person because of their drive versus somebody who's super busy that may not have the attention to give to you.
Right.
What are some of, from your perspective, having worked with a million of these people and you continue to do so, I would like to go a little bit deeper on that conversation because we kind of left it. And from your perspective, I am a, middle of the road real estate agent, even though, as you mentioned, that may not exist right now.
Yep.
I'm struggling. I want more strategic partners.
Yep.
What should I be looking for? What should I be seeking? What questions should I be asking?
Yep. So let me say this, because this is the thing that I see both in the mortgage and real estate sector that has been the biggest negative influence on production of anything I've seen. It's technology, believe it or not. Now, let me be clear, I'm not an anti-technology guy at all. The reason it's become a problem is because we have replaced relationship with technology. We have opted in business, so many of us, to think that being efficient and making it easy and simple is going to enhance the experience for the customer and ultimately drive more business. And there's nothing further from the truth. Nothing further from the truth. Every top producer I trained, thousands of them across the country, out of the millions that I've trained, every one of them, when you ask the question, I've on my podcast that I do, I had Sean Benosian, #1 loan officer in the country for 8 straight years. I had a kid named Hunter Strong. That kid does 100 mortgage loans a month, all purchased with realtors and investors. Kara Whitman does 900 loans a year. These are 3 of the top 25 loan officers in the country. Asked them all the same question. What's the #1 key to your success? They all had the same answer. Relationship, relationship, relationship. It's about people. It's about getting to know your customers at a level that nobody else does. It's about taking the time. It's not about just emailing them a contract, emailing them, a listing, emailing them some information for them to look at and say, okay, when you find a place, let me know. That's the wrong way to approach it. It's, you know what? We do it right around here. And what that means is we want to come in, we want you to come to the office. We're going to bring in our top-notch mortgage professional. We're going to sit down with you. We're going to find you a home right there in that meeting. We're not going to dilly-dally around. We're going to get this thing done the right way. We're going to pre-approve you on the spot. We're going to do your budget. We're going to make sure we get you in a home you can afford, and we are going to do it the right way. And while we're looking at properties, we're going to show you strategies that will help you be more successful in getting the home that you're looking for. And when you build it around that really personalized human experience, you just win so many more customers. Now, there is a percentage of customers that do want to do it technologically, and that's fine. You can accommodate that. But the problem that I see, Jeff, is a lot of loan officers specifically, the borrower doesn't really want the tech experience, but the loan officer does because it's easier for them.
Mm-hmm.
So they push it on the borrower. Hey, you know what? I'm thinking about buying a home. I'd like to apply for a mortgage. Okay, give me your email address. I'll send you a link to an application. Oh, okay. Well, I guess we could do that way, but I do have 20 minutes right now. No, you know what? Let me send this to you because that way I've got your information. I can pull your credit, get you approved. I'll call you back with an offer. No, they're just going to go to somebody else who will talk to them.
Yeah.
We see the same thing in the real estate business with showings. A lot of realtors have gotten real gung-ho on the tech side. Let's just do this all technology. Let's do it that way. But you miss out on so much of the fiber of why people buy. Remember, this is the thing we can never forget. This is the single largest financial decision people make in America in their lifetime.
Mm-hmm.
This is not an Amazon purchase where I'm spending $300. And yes, I don't mind spending $300 when I can get it for $280 down the street because they're going to deliver tomorrow morning. I have to leave my house. I'll pay $20 for that. But in the real estate business, it's a different deal. I want experts. I want advisors. I want people who understand my situation, who are going to get me the best home with the best loan, with the best situation I can possibly get. And to do that, I expect them to know things about me. I expect them to interview me and spend time with me. So the answer is, instead of investing in doing more TikTok things. This is what drives me nuts, is the real estate agents and the loan officers who think they're going to be the next influencer, and they're not. They spend hours crafting a message on social media that two people will like, and neither one of them are going to buy.
Yeah.
Instead of being out in the community, meeting with people, being involved in community events, doing things that will attract all kinds of people, doing open houses. Open houses are gold mines because everybody that walks to the house is going to buy a home. Only one can buy that home. So you get 50 more buyers for other properties that you can start farming out. These are the ways that you build an incredible empire in this marketplace today, is focus on service and relationship, because nobody does. We can't even go get a fast food burger in 3 minutes anymore like we used to. It takes 20.
Yeah. And it costs $15.
And it costs $15.
Yeah.
So the beauty of this business is education's key, relationship is the game.
Yeah. Yeah. I love that you're saying all of this. And I think some people are probably thinking to themselves, oh gosh, you're saying this to Mr. Social Media guy and the stupid title that I don't even claim to have. But the funny thing is as we talk about that, there's AI, there's of course social media. The funny thing is, and Dale, you don't know this about me, but when I preach about social, it's all about it. The likes don't matter, the views don't matter, the virality doesn't matter. You have an opportunity with social to touch that same consumer in a way that hits them with dopamine versus maybe the phone call, the text message, the other ways that they've become inundated with, but it's not replacing the fostering of a relationship. In fact, it's just enhancing relationship that you should have with your consumer. And that's how you should be using social, not because you think you're going to close 5 deals because you did one cute dance. That's not going to work.
Right.
And
let me clarify, Jeff, because you were in a training session with me, so you know the answer to this question already. I'm not saying you're not on social. You darn well better be on social, and you better be darn good at it. Don't spend hours and hours and hours.
Amen.
I've literally talked to learners say, I spent 3 hours today because I wanted to do a video, and it took me 22 tries to get it right. I'm like, are you kidding me?
Yeah.
Do you know how many people you could have contacted in that time you spent doing that? Yeah. Just do it however you do it. People love it when you flub things up sometimes. That's sometimes your best followed post. Yeah. The key is minimize your time, because Jeff might be an influencer, but you're probably not going to be an influencer. You're probably going to have a small audience. You want to educate them. You want to say things that create, I love how you said the dopamine. That's exactly right. Yeah. And keep it within limitations, so you're not spending all of your time in this one place and you're spending no time with human beings. Yeah. That will not be a formula for success.
Yeah. It's funny that we're talking about this too. I just got asked to come speak in Arizona, and they want me to talk about AI. And I told them, I said, to be honest with you, I think AI, that whole space has become so massively diluted that people can't focus anymore. It's just this shiny object, that shiny object. And I said, to be honest with you, I really would like to tell the message that I think the human ultimately is still going to succeed over the robot, because so many of the humans are going to lean so far into AI. They're going to become so inauthentic. And I think that the platforms are going to also evolve and learn to read what's a robot, what's human written versus robot written. And it's going to be that 2% that continue to press play, be authentic, not worry about perfection, and just pump it out as a strategy that is in addition to all of the other things, that is going to be the one that wins. And we're so hyper focused on, like you said, it's like get rich quick. And we all know by now that doesn't exist.
It does not. The old-fashioned way of, plodding along a day at a time, building deep relationships, educating people well, really providing exceptional service, they're more powerful today than they've ever been, because everybody else has gone the other direction. Yeah. It's like, I learned this 42 years ago. If you want to succeed in business, do the opposite of what everybody else is doing, because most people fail in business. So if you want to be the success, don't be like them. Do it different than they do it. And we've talked about all kinds of strategies today that are very unique, very different, and very against the mainstream of what you see out there today.
Yeah. Last question about those top producers. What is their answer? Maybe you did or didn't. I'm sure you know the answer. When you ask them and their answer is, what is the most important thing? The answer is relationships. It's belly to belly. It's not pushing people to the app. But when you mention a guy who's doing 100 deals a month, he's got to have systems. He's got to have a team. How
Yeah.
do they effectively manage that without literally working themselves to death?
Yeah. So they understand a great loan officer does a lot of business, understands there's two pieces to the mortgage loan officer equation. There's the hunter piece and there's the farmer piece. Okay. The hunter is the loan officer who's out in the field, meeting with the referral partners, driving in the opportunities, going to the realtor luncheons, doing the open houses, running the events. And that's what the hunters of the world that close 100 loans, that's what they spend all their time doing. The farmers, which are the ones that deal with the customers that get referred, they're people that emulate the hunter in their enthusiasm, in their relationship skills, and all of those, but they're 100% committed to the customer side of the transaction. Generally, and I've trained so many teams over the years where loan officers come and say, I want to grow my business. I want to get bigger. I want to bring loan officers underneath me. I go, no, you don't. You want to bring LOAs underneath you. You want to bring assistants in who don't necessarily want to be a loan officer, but they love working with customers. They're very relational. You don't have to pay them a crazy amount of money. They work a 40-hour work week, but they're killer when they do it. You just go drive it in and let them do the magic behind the scenes. That's how they do 100 loans a month, is they have people that are handling that. And it's funny because even then they have the first conversation with that customer to launch that, like, you're still working with me as the name person, but now let me endorse my guy or gal over here. You're in great hands. They're going to communicate with me daily. And if there's a problem, you'll be hearing from me, not from them.
Yeah.
And that's how they run their business. And they're able to do massive volume doing that.
Yeah. And also, you didn't mention it, but I think some people have a problem with letting go of control. And that's
true.
probably a big component to this as well. Dale, this has been fantastic. Obviously, we could easily keep going, but being mindful of time and trying to keep this within a 60-minute episode, which is important, I have to wrap this up. Second to last question, because the last question is going to be how can they connect with you? But the second to last question is, what would be your parting words to share with our audience?
Everything starts with your belief system. It doesn't matter what your behaviors are and what your strategies are and what your system is. If you don't believe that you're making a difference in that consumer's life, and if you don't believe that this is a market that's aligned for your success, it's that simple. So the thing I would tell everybody watching this is, look, quit worrying about the rates. Quit worrying about all of the things out of your control, okay? People are buying in record numbers still. We still see lots of activity out there. Get your market share. Just get your market share. Don't worry about everything else and whatever else is doing. Understand, if you build the best relationships, educate better than anybody else, provide the best service, you're a pro's pro in everything that you do. You are going to get more than your share of that business, I promise you. And then you won't have to worry about that. But you got to stop getting up in the morning, checking your emails and getting all the bad news first thing out of the gate, looking online, checking what rates are doing, checking what the market's doing. You're starting your day with failure.
Yeah.
And it's going to get away from you when you do that. Get up in the morning, remind yourself you're in the greatest industry in the world. People are going to be buying today. They need an expert like me, and go sell. Just go straight sell for a couple of hours in the morning. Make your morning always be dedicated to sales activities. You can always do all the other stuff later in the day after you've gotten some customers, picked up some contracts, and done the things you want to do. It all starts here before it ever gets to here. So build your belief system right. Have confidence that the mortgage business and real estate business ain't going anywhere. The American dream will stay the American dream. It's not going to change. And go out and be great at what you do, and you're going to be fine.
Yeah, I would add to that and say go find people that have that mindset, because most of us
Yes.
find ourselves we end up in a bubble of the negativity, which then
Yep.
drives us with it. It's all in the lens. That's really what I've taken from today is adjust your lens.
Yep.
Because as you mentioned, there's opportunity. We're told there's not, but the way you articulated it and broke it down, it really tells me there's actually more opportunity, but yet most people don't see it that way.
Right.
Dale, this has been fantastic. I really appreciate you coming on and sharing. What
Honored
is
to be
the
with you.
best way? What is the best way for our audience to get in touch with you?
Yeah, DaleVermillion.com, MortgageChampions.com. My email is dale@dalevermillion.com if you want to reach out to me, but probably dalevermillion.com. Just go on there. My team will get right with you. If there's something you need, we'll be glad to help you with it. Jeff, it's been an honor to be with you. I really appreciate you taking the
Yeah,
time and inviting me on.
likewise. Likewise, man. Look forward to hopefully staying in touch and continuing to kind of build a relationship before you leave us all and fade off into the beach sunset.
I got to get you on batting 1,000. You can talk
I'd
about
love
social media. I would
I'd
love to
love to.
have
I'd
you do
love
that.
to. Love
All
to.
right.
Love
Done
to.
deal. We'll make that happen.
All right, man. Thank you
All
very
right.
much.
God bless. Thank you.
Lab Coat Agents Podcast.